It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club, the podcast where we talk to celebrity guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host.
Hey, I'm Bryce Johnson.
And your producer,
Riley Bray.
And I feel like now I have to dance and entertain the guests during that opening song.
There's a certain thing that happens whenever that music is queued up.
You kind of know if someone's going to have a good time on the show or not, depending on what their reaction to the song is. And our guest today had the best reaction of them all. You've heard him on many podcasts before. This guy is podcast genius. You know him from Supergeo. You know him from Pistol Shrimps Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mark McConville.
Woo! Hey,
what's up, dude?
That's some good dancing in a chair.
I like to do a little, it's like I feel like I have to work hard to sell the show. I don't know, for some reason. It's like, just let it.
Just let the song speak, man.
The show, the Suneaters did a great job. Pete Gardner did a great job as the Sasquatch. Yeah. Just let the song sell itself.
That wasn't a real Sasquatch doing the...
Unfortunately not. Our recordings of the real Sasquatch, they got lost in translation.
They're a little blurry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we had to have Pete Gardner sub in.
Mark, I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is, I always feel guilt. I know Mark from doing Thrilling Adventure Hour.
That's, I think, where we met.
Yeah. I came in late on that whole enterprise, but
right.
I spent maybe the last year doing a few shows with you guys before it left Largo. And it's so funny, though, every time I see Mark now, and it was funny because I saw you. I was doing Gravid Water last month, and I saw you sitting in the audience. You kind of waved to me at the end of the show. But I always feel guilty because I went to Disneyland one time, and Mark was doing... Can I tell this story?
Yes.
Mark was doing, he was doing a show at the Golden Nugget, which is like in
the Golden Horseshoe.
Golden Horseshoe, that's right.
Okay, gotcha.
I go there for the nuggets, the chicken nuggets.
They do have good chicken.
They have really good chicken there. Well, my buddy and I got to Disneyland, and we were running late. And I think we had sat and watched that show before, and you weren't in it. But we were like, let's get some food real quick. We'll just go into the Golden Horseshoe. We'll grab those nuggets, and then we'll hit the road. We had like fast passes. We wanted to do Radiator Springs over DCA. So
you got stuff to do.
We had shit to do. So we go
Gotta
in.
have a plan.
There's like a table down front, and so we're just like, all right, we'll just eat quick and duck out. And lo and behold, Mark comes on stage, pretty quickly makes eye contact with me, I think.
No.
And then I was like, fuck, I'm going to walk out on Mark's performance. And I just felt so guilty. We stayed for a little bit, and then I was like, we got to go.
You kind of signed like, my nuggets are done. I'm just going to...
Well, what's really funny about that, I'm remembering that. So...
Oh, my God.
I worked there for a while, and...
Which is... So I want to talk to you about that, because
we can talk about that, too.
Go on.
But I would... And just before we started recording, I was saying I came from the eye doctor, and she was like, "Well, try these contacts." And I know they're like not cheap, so I'm like, guess I'm wearing contacts today. For that job, I would sometimes just not wear contacts, and I have distance issues, so I only sort of knew it was you.
Busted.
I was like, I couldn't.
I couldn't.
You could have got away with it.
You could have got away with it. But you could see my face because I was up close going, no, how am I going to get out of this one?
Please, everyone should have just walked out of that thing.
No, that show's fun. That's like a classic. I love I called it by the wrong name, but I love the Golden Horseshoe because that was like a that's been around since Walt started the park.
Yeah, and a guy, Wally Bogue. Do you know Wally Bogue?
Yeah. I don't know him, but I mean, yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
But he used to do just show after show. I mean, he did a very funny thing where he would like spit his teeth out.
Oh,
he'd
cool.
like get smacked with some. I can't remember exactly how it went. I'm sure it's online, but you can.
Well, you listen.
He would just like continue the show and like spit little like white beans or something, but like they look like teeth.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Just an old vaudeville, like
that was
the end of vaudeville.
That was what was so cool about. Did you ever read Steve Martin's book on his stand-up? I forget what it was called, but Steve Martin used to work at Disneyland back when all the shops had like real. I mean, there's still like shops, but now they're all kind of like Disney gift stores. But he used to work at the magic shop there, and there were real like real magicians that worked at the Disneyland magic shop that could do sleight of hand, that could do real tricks. He would learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
There were like old vaudeville performers that would come do shows at the Golden Horseshoe. Like there was a period of like up through the 70s, I think, when like there were like some like real old school names in the business doing shows there. I don't know. So there's like it's got this lineage that I think is really, really cool.
Like I don't work there anymore, but if you go I'm sure this is still the case. The dirty secret is the musicians. I mean, it's not that dirty of a secret, but they're
heroin addicts.
They're all heroin addicts. There's some legends. There's a guy, Terry, who plays guitar for some of the jazz bands, and he replaced Hendrix when Hendrix left Little Richard's band.
No way.
That's wild.
Like Hendrix, like I guess played with Little Richard for a little bit, and then this guy Terry played with him forever. Like, I mean, that's music history.
Yeah, I mean, and
he's still playing with jazz trios and stuff
so
at Disneyland.
Cool.
So yeah, I always encourage people if they're at Disneyland because it is such a hustle, and there's just so many people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's
check out a musician, like sit down and watch these guys play.
And there's a guy
Some
that
really
I love
good
the piano, or I think it's an organist that's out on that little plaza near the
Coke
like
Corner.
that little sweet shop, whatever they have there, and that guy's always brilliant.
Yeah, the piano players are awesome.
All the music. There's as example, there's just like such great talent there at the park that you kind of don't think about, but
yeah, it's easy to forget that there's like a ton of shows going on all the time.
Now I got to ask you, have you been in the underground tunnels at Disneyland? There's supposedly a network of tunnels under Disneyland.
A secret underground alien base at Disneyland.
I can't say. I feel like I've been in tunnels at Disneyland that are not really underground.
Right.
You know, there's a berm built around the park.
Okay.
So
let's talk about this. This is exciting.
There's a large hill that sort of encircles it.
Right.
And there are tunnels
where the train rides
yes,
around.
and there are tunnels under that hill to get to sort of
cast
areas
back
that
doors
you
and
need
stuff.
Yeah,
like
I've read
the
about
parking lot.
those.
Is Walt Disney's frozen corpse under the statue at the center of the hub?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I believe he's buried in Forest Lawn, but there was a rumor that he's
buried there.
Well, he was cryogenically frozen.
I knew that.
And then there was like a kid urban legend that he was buried under the statue of him and Mickey at the central
Well,
hub.
of course, because if you have an imagination that grand, you think you're just going to go out regular style. No, man, you're going to do something amazing, man.
I don't even think he's frozen. I think he was buried at Forest Lawn. I don't think they actually
I think
frozen.
his head's right where you said
You think
it
where
was.
his head is?
Yes.
It's just his head.
Do you think it's possible that he just said, "Hey, when I die, bury me in Forest Lawn, but tell everyone that everything's frozen." Like, let's have this be my final story that just keeps getting talked about.
If you could be cryogenically frozen when you die, if science was proven, hey, you can do this and we'll be able to bring you back after you die, would you do it, or would you just want to die?
Wait. So I could continue to live?
If science could bring you back.
If science could bring you, if you could die now and in 200 years science could bring you back to life because you froze your body, would you
go for it?
Is it free?
No, you gotta. I mean,
I have to have some.
You have to imagine like your great
grandchild
grandchild is a millionaire and be like, I'm gonna bring back Mark.
Well, I think you pay for it up front. Let's say it's a reasonable price. Let's say it's the price of a car, of a new car.
What's the interest rate?
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
Okay.
Like I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. This feels like Genie Wish territory.
It is kind of Genie Wish.
There's some fine print that I haven't read, and like 200 years from now,
don't worry about that, Mark.
You know,
it'll be unbearably hot on the earth.
You know, today's show's all about genies. Yeah, right. Yeah, it could turn into a monkey's paw scenario where you're the only, you like wake up and now you're a cryogenically frozen like slave to the alien overlords that have taken over Earth.
Yeah,
Then you'd be like, fuck, this isn't what I signed up for.
I don't want that. If that's what the choice is, then no.
Right.
You could
Would you
then
want to
maybe
be
cremation is right for you.
Yeah. Would you want to be immortal? Does the idea of being immortal appeal to you?
Wow.
Get into it.
Not really.
Yeah.
I just somebody just brought up like, could you, if you lived to 250? And I was like, well, no.
Right.
Am I immortal like how I am right now and I never change? Again, I just get right into give me some details.
Yeah,
here.
interview with a vampire like Brad Pitt style. You just get to be ageless and live
ageless
forever.
Would be great. If you could be like vampire style, if I could just stop aging where I'm at now, that would be cool.
Well, can I start eating kale and like work out more
you
for a
can,
while
sure.
to get in shape?
Yeah, you can.
And then we freeze that.
You can still, yeah, exactly. You can still get in shape, but you just won't age. You just won't turn into an old person. Because I think like the shitty deal about our life as it is like if you think about it, we really spend more time as an old person than anything else.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, because if you're in your like late 70s, you can still live another 30 years. That is like a big, and that's like, a third or fourth of your life where you're like old.
That's also just
more,
improving.
Sometimes half. Yeah, I know.
People are living to 120, 130.
Yeah, that's really
I heard
recent.
somewhere that somebody born around now will live to 200.
I mean, I think about that. My niece and nephew, I'm like, dude, these kids are going to live forever. But then what do we do about the population? I mean, the population is like a really big problem.
I agree.
Because like that's the thing is like everybody
You're getting the hard questions today.
I know. Our last episode was just a layup, and now I just want to get into like, killing off half the population so we can maintain the planet.
Immortality, population control.
This is why we need the one world government.
What do you think?
Yeah, what's your thoughts on all this stuff, Mark? No, but I'm saying like that we run into trouble if no one is dying. Then we were, that takes a toll on the planet.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot of ethical conundrums. Anyway, let's talk about aliens.
You got
something more sensible.
Yeah. Do you,
Exactly.
Mark, do you have what's your personal paranormal history? Do you have anything that's ever happened to you in the realm of the unexplained?
Well, I was thrilled when you asked me to do this show because I don't have any of that
Yeah,
stuff.
well, we get a lot of that.
And I was like, oh, I want to do it, but I don't. So I did think about it.
We're learning that a lot of the comedy people have none of these. A lot of the actors, like straight up like drama people, they're like, I was adopted by a ghost mother, and I always knew that I was special.
Oh no!
So I grew up in Wisconsin, and it's a little town called Hudson, which is near the Twin Cities.
Yeah,
and there was a book that came out when I was maybe, I don't know, in my teenage years called Haunted Wisconsin.
Ooh, Wisconsin's got some weird
all the
stuff
ghost
going
stories of Wisconsin. And so my hometown had one in there, and I just looked it up.
Let's hear about it. I want to hear it. This is great.
Oh, it's just like a founder of the town's son haunts a house.
Is he headless or anything?
I don't think so.
He just haunts a house.
And then the house was torn down for development, and now the whole road is called Cooley Road. It's sort of on the edge of town.
Is the ghost
it leads
named
from
Cooley?
down the no.
Cooley family?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
But that was it. But I don't like being scared. I don't like haunted houses. I don't like
you like
All
me.
right.
I don't like jump scares stuff. Like I've avoided a lot of horror genre stuff because I just generally don't like the anxiety of being
not a thrill
scared.
for you.
So I never really looked that up as a kid.
Right.
Because I was just like, oh, I'll just stay away from it. And then when I looked it up as an adult, I went, oh, just a guy died in 1800 and people think that they saw him. Like, all right.
Yeah.
And then the other really creepy thing that's here in LA, the LA area anyway, is the Queen Mary.
Oh, have you been down there?
I did the ghost tour they do like a scary tour. I don't know if you guys have done this.
Now, for our listeners, the Queen Mary is a large ship out on Long Beach Pier.
Yes, it's a dry dock ship.
Dry dock ship. Yeah,
And
it's a
did it-
museum now.
And it used to be a cruise ship, correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
It was
It's like an entertainment ship.
It's
not like a
Titanic
battleship.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steamship. It's enormous. I think Titanic was bigger, but it's big.
Yeah.
And there's ghost talk on that thing, and
yeah.
there's I don't know, ghost people will be like, come and stay the night.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that, but that
was too scary for
There's
you.
a couple of legends. One of them is that this girl drowned in the pool, and then there are
The ocean is right there.
right. But there's a full Olympic-sized swimming pool on the ship,
Yeah.
and she drowned, and there are wet footprints.
Oh, that's
They
creepy.
find wet footprints after it's been cleaned. Like
I picture
in the
her
morning.
looking like Annie
Right.
from Little Orphan Annie.
So then, but when you go on this tour, the room is already sort of like not kept up well. It's old. It's creepy as is.
Okay.
And then they tell that story, and you're just like, oh shit, this is
Right.
creepy. Then the lights go out, and the very highly produced music comes on, and then there's little like glow in the dark footprint. They
they
did an
do that?
effect, which
Production
then
value.
somehow takes it off the creepy
Yeah.
and into like, we get it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
told the story.
I think at one point, I don't know if it actually happened, but I think Disney was going to buy the Queen
I
Mary.
think they bought it.
And they did. So maybe
And
that's
got
where
off
some of the
of it.
okay, they got away from it. Maybe
Yeah,
that's where
it's
some of that
gone-
production value came in. Maybe that was
Yeah.
like, because I think like Michael Eisner era Disney, they were going to open up a Westcott like down in like Epcot Center, but down in Long Beach.
Well, because the Spruce Goose is also in a big dome-looking thing at that pier.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that.
Yeah, at least it was for a long time. There's like a big sort of dome. And I
Right.
guess the Spruce Goose lives there,
Okay.
or it did for a long time. The other one is like the guys in the guts of the ship were like steamed alive
Yeah.
when pipes
Wow.
broke.
Oh, God.
And that's creepy. Like, so they take you into these parts of the ship that
That's like a bad Spider-Man villain origin story.
Yeah.
Like when the steam burns you into a steam ghost.
the stories are horrifying.
Yeah.
And so, of all of the sort of scary things, I felt legitimately scared just looking at stuff on that old ass ship.
Yeah, I've heard some fucked up stories. I remember hearing a story about like a couple who did the overnight thing, and I think this was like friends of mine, but they were like getting ready for the night, and she was like, excuse me, her husband was in the restroom, and there was like a full-length mirror, and either he or she saw a full apparition appear over their shoulder in the mirror, tying his tie in like an old tux and getting ready to go out. And they like didn't last the night. They left before
We're out.
They say that till after dinner, and then that night I think they were back in their hotel room and they saw something else, and then they talked to each other and like we're out. They left.
See ya.
My wife and I stayed for one. She had a birthday party before we got married on the Queen Mary. We stayed overnight. I never had any creepiness. I just was like, oh yeah, these are some poor sap bought this old boat and tried to make it into a hotel.
Right.
Like that's all I ever felt
Yeah.
on it. Though, I mean, you can walk out on the dock and look under the ship and they've got a propeller exposed and that creeps me out.
Okay,
But other than those things.
so you're just scared of
the ghost stories
and
of my
propellers.
kids and the ghost stories of my childhood and an
Yeah.
old creepy boat make me scared. Otherwise, I don't really.
You're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty agnostic about it. I'm totally
Right.
open to,
That's great.
if a UFO floats over my house tomorrow,
Yeah.
then great. And if it
Right.
doesn't, that's cool too.
If it doesn't, do UFOs exist?
Well, then I feel like you get into sort of that infinite possibilities thing of just
Let's talk
if we
about it.
If space and time are infinitely expanding, if
yep.
that is actually true, then of course all kinds of stuff exists that we'll probably never know about.
Right. I agree, or at least not yet.
Right. So it's possible.
Okay,
But
So you're
that's
not-
about as far as I'm willing to go.
okay.
I'd like to see something.
Where
I'd
is
like to experience
You would.
something.
So you're open to
I'm
it.
sure.
If you could take a pick, you could see a ghost, you could see a UFO, or you could see Bigfoot. Which one of those?
Ooh, go
would
for the
you like?
Bigfoot, Mark.
I think I will.
Yeah. I'll take the Bigfoot, please. Why? Why would you choose Bigfoot?
Oh, you know what? I might switch. I feel like Bigfoot might be able to run me down.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's bad.
But wouldn't you want to then be able to be like, no, Bigfoot definitely exists?
Oh, so I can check one of these off?
Yeah, you can check one
Then
off.
it's got to be ghosts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Because I'll probably become one.
Oh,
If that's how ghosts. I mean, we don't know how ghosts work.
that's true.
So
We try to come up with our own rules on this show, but
I think we try to come up with rules about all of this stuff.
well, that's really what we do on this podcast.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
we're
yeah.
trying to like every week as we get a new story, we start to go. We're really in this zone
We're zeroing
right now.
in.
But unfortunately, I think that like our philosophy is taking on kind of like your own that idea put forth. Where like it's just so infinite that there's so many infinite possibilities. But we've been heavily lately in this realm of like we think a lot of this stuff might be
Related.
outside of our dimension coming into our dimension and fucking
Oh.
around with our reality. It may not be your nuts and bolts spaceships from other planets, although those could also exist,
Mhm.
or your like flesh and blood creatures living in the woods, but they might be some sort of entity that's passing in and out of our space-time and
Sure.
crossing over from other dimensions.
There's more. We feel there's more here happening here on Earth, whether it's in this time and space or you know what I mean. There's something to what's going on this planet. I think that there's a lot more to that than there is than just like some different species traveling light years away to get here to observe us.
So you're saying the phenomenon is more homegrown,
Most definitely.
but we just don't understand if it's people having like fits, or if there is some type of weird homegrown paranormal intelligence that's trying to manifest itself.
Yeah,
and talk
possibly.
to us.
Or there's certain portals or certain ley lines on this Earth's grid that are, or what you would call quote unquote hot spots for paranormal activity, or for cross dimensional players to come in and out of. I mean, I don't know.
Now, Mark, did you expect to hear the term ley lines today?
I don't even know what that means.
Oh, well, Bryce, explain what ley lines are.
Oh, so ley lines are like if you took the Earth and you sort of gridded it out. As the equator is like, let's say, a horizontal line around the middle of the Earth. Well, then there's also these other lines, vertical.
They're like energy lines.
And yeah, they really
So
just,
not longitude and latitude.
No. This isn't. This is something that exists within the energy of the
Well, to kind of
Earth.
give you an example, like they say a lot of the ancient monolithic sites are kind
like
of
Stonehenge.
Yeah.
and the
Is it at
pyramids.
an intersection of a bunch of ley lines?
This is a plot in the new Ghostbusters.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
There's
Yeah,
a building
I've seen
that's
it, but-
on ley lines.
Oh, yeah.
They,
Yeah.
Now it's familiar.
Yeah.
Well, see, and so if you put little tacks in a map where a lot of these high strange episodes happen, then there seems to be some sort of connection. Like there's a lot happening here, and it also can connect here. And so I think there's several authors that have proposed theories about.
I don't know too much about I mean, I know what they're supposed to be, but I need to sit down and really read up on like where did this term come from? When did this become popular? Who has attempted to map this?
I guess the better word would be like hotspot.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But there's supposed to be these energy lines that wrap around the Earth, and then they condense in certain intersections where there's like, oh, this is like the 405 and 105. This is like the LAX, like ley line junction.
Right.
They deal with magnetism a lot.
That's the
ley
other
lines.
thing,
That's
too.
the
There you
main
go.
thing about them. So they are measurable. They're not like sort of this abstract concept. It's
Okay.
It deals with the magnetic polarity of the planet and the way that energy manifests itself.
I just remember reading a book when I was a kid where they would be like, maybe the Druids used ley lines as a way to float rocks from one point to a giant heavy rocks. They were like floating them across the ley lines. They had some Druid magic that would allow them to tap into the ley line and move heavy objects.
I
Now
mean, that's probably not a
that
thing.
would be pretty fucking cool, though.
it would be cool.
Would
but
be awesome.
I think my other part of like my personal interaction with this stuff is I do find Occam's razor to be quite reliable. Of just the simplest explanation is probably true, and some of the stuff is unexplainable. So then I think the default simplest explanation becomes people see things because they want to see them, or they have a mental chemical imbalance, or they're on drugs,
or a mental chemical gift.
We're positive around
Yeah.
here.
Sure. So that, I hear the like, oh, the Druids used magic to
Yeah, man.
levitate stones. It's like, or a bunch of guys were just really strong.
Hey, maybe back then.
Like that to me seems
boring.
Maybe,
I know.
maybe back then ley lines were the simplest explanation.
true. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was old technology from an old civilization that's been wiped out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Do you think
Right.
that's possible? Do you think civilization has peaked to the point we're at before, but maybe coming at things from a little bit of a different angle, and then like a meteor struck and just wiped us out or something?
So we got this far.
We got this far, but maybe it looked a little different. Like maybe the Sphinx. They say the Sphinx is left over from an ancient civilization that's much older than we think.
They say that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They
because
say it.
Yeah, there's
They say it. Graham Hancock's all his stuff is all about ancient, like that. A lot of our history predates the history that we're taught.
All right.
Well,
And
the
then they
Sphinx,
can
they had
find-
that in that outer layer of the Sphinx. It was John Alexander and his scientific counterpart. I forget his name, but they found water weathering that would have to conclude through their analysis that the last time this thing was built had to predate a flood,
A desert climate or a flood.
yeah, a
And
tropical
that goes
climate.
way back before the
Oh.
ancient
And
Egyptians.
kind of, modern Egyptologists, they kind of poo-poo that whole theory. But, I mean, it's right there in the stone. I mean, so even geologists have to kind of...
And they've
Right.
found like bones of humans that are deep within the earth that carbon dating is it's like thousands, if not a million years before they thought humans were first up and running around.
These are the coldest of cold cases.
Oh, yeah. No shit. Totally.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They need to get Paul Holes on that. That's a deep cut reference
doubt.
for all those who are following the Golden State Killer case.
Yeah.
But are you into that shit?
That's I mean, I certainly am more intrigued by tangible, real life monsters. Like what I was saying, like I don't like horror movies or being scared like that. Like Jason Voorhees is terrifying to me because of some
Jason
weird
Voorhees
reason.
is like a zombie, basically.
Well, yeah, any of the supernatural stuff freaks me out, but then I will read books about the Zodiac.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
And that doesn't bother you because that never scared me.
It doesn't scare me, but it's
scare me as much as
fascinating
it
to
should.
me.
Yes.
It's fascinating, especially in the era that we live in with
Right.
cameras and recording equipment everywhere. Everyone's got it in their pocket. I'm blown away that anybody can get away with anything.
Well, now I think that's why they say that like mass shooting has become so popular because instead of like serial killings, now people just get it all out of their system at once and they become famous that way.
It's actually it's a
fucked
good
up.
point. It's terrible.
It's fucked up.
But
No, it's not a
good
fun point at all. But things have shifted from that to this now.
Because Golden State might be the last guy who.
Yeah, because
like
now with
80s,
DNA they
yeah.
can get everybody, and now they're trying to do DNA search right now on the Zodiac Killer. They're trying to collect from their samples like solid enough DNA to run it through like the 23andMe system,
Which
see
is
if they
illegal.
Get any familial hits? Is it? Because I thought no, but wait, I thought that because I had heard before all this stuff went down that if you sign up for one of these ancestor DNA things, that there is a thing in the terms of agreement where you waive your rights to your own DNA.
That's true.
And that's what I thought.
Looked
And that
into
they
it.
can sell that because you sign in the waiver in the terms of agreement that they can then sell your information to medical companies if they want to,
Right.
and can probably hand it over to law enforcement. So it's one of those things where if you sign up for it, like the fucking Cambridge Analytical bullshit on Facebook, your information might be sold to other places.
But I think in the case of the DNA, you're supposed to be submitting your own DNA.
Right.
And signing that off for yourself.
okay, I
So
got
you would
it.
not be able to.
Take
Let's
your
say you
DNA.
thought you had the Zodiac Killer's DNA in your possession.
Right.
It is illegal for you to submit that
Oh, got it. Because
anonymously
he
or with a
technically would
pseudonym.
have to. But I think that they're so yeah. I'd
If
be
he's still
interested to
alive.
find out. But they
He might not be alive.
right. Well, yeah, he'd be pretty old.
I think he's pretty dead.
I think he's probably dead. Do you
What-
think it's
What a creep. He's probably a ghost.
Do you think it's the guy who? Yeah. Do you think he's the guy that Graysmith thought he was? The dude that was
don't
like that
know.
mechanic that kind of stopped writing after he died in prison. He's the guy in the Fincher film that was
That's
played by the
right.
dude from Fargo, but they didn't. The handwriting didn't match in that case.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I will never know. Do you think Jack the Ripper's still alive?
Yes.
Okay,
Definitely.
because he's a time traveler.
For sure.
I heard he's frozen underneath Disneyland.
Yeah. All right. Well, when we come back, we're gonna have our high strangeness topic of the week.
Sweet.
And we're back, and it's time for high strangeness. This week is Bryce's turn. Bryce.
Yeah, I got a
Which-
big one this week.
This is a heavy hitter.
I
I know what
know.
you're doing. This is one that we've been saving, and then when you told me what you were doing, I almost went, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
And then I decided, you know what? I'm
It's
just
due
gonna
time.
let Bryce free, and it's time we cover this one.
It's due time. So, are you familiar with the Mothman?
Can you
And his-
believe it?
I
And his
know.
prophecies?
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Synchronicity. Riley is wearing his Mothman T-shirt right now.
That's true.
I only know that they made a movie called The Mothman Prophecies,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
I did not see because
Oh.
it's scary, and
Yeah.
I don't like scary
It's a
stuff.
pretty
It's
good
scary.
one, but
It's
it's,
a great
sort of a
one.
modern retelling of the story, so
Yeah.
it's not completely.
I'm very
factually
curious.
Well, most of
accurate.
that movie was based on a famed paranormal journalist named John Keel, and the following paragraphs are taken directly from the back of John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies.
That's as far as we get in our research. We just read the back of books.
Well, no, these are. I thought you would like these. For 13 months, the entire town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was gripped by a dark terror that culminated in the tragedy that made headlines all over the world. This is the story that contains all the elements of a modern science fiction movie, but every single word is true and fully documented by famed journalist John A. Keel. Homes throughout the little towns were plagued with unearthly noises and ghostly manifestations, while mysterious aerial lights traveled silently overhead, seemingly on a regular schedule. Winged monsters and frightening apparitions terrified the population as automobiles stalled, telephones and TV sets ran amok. A Red Cross bloodmobile filled with fresh blood was pursued along a darkened highway
By a vampire.
by a weird flying machine.
A weird flying machine?
That's what it says. Domestic animals were found slaughtered and mutilated in pastoral farm fields. Innocent people lived in surrealistic horror, haunted by the fearsome demonic bird and besieged by legions of strange beings, some of which arrived in ordinary-looking automobiles. Yeah, now it says flying machine because Mothman, some reports, they often heard a humming sound, like a whizzz, like a
drone,
like a mechanical sound.
I was picturing one of those like steampunk guys on an old bicycle that's like flapping with bat wings.
Yeah, well, you might
slow down the bloodmobile.
You might be right. So this is the story of the Mothman. Mothman is often described as a humanoid figure, around 7 feet tall with a massive dark wingspan and huge hypnotic glowing red eyes, and a blood-curdling shriek that's been known to make those who hear it experience nausea and vertigo. The creature of legend, simply known as the Mothman, seems to be some sort of harbinger of doom, connected to tragic events across the world, with sightings becoming more frequent in the days leading up to horrific events. 2 bridge collapses, the Chernobyl disaster, Fukushima, 9/11, and
Wait,
with its
what?
Yeah.
There's a Mothman connected to 9/11.
Each one of those, that's right. And with its most recent sightings in Chicago, one has to wonder, were these the latest sightings or perhaps a prelude to Kanye's rant on TMZ?
Oh, good one. Aha.
Putting the pieces together.
Thank you. The first
A zing.
A zinger. The first recorded Mothman sighting took place on November 12th, 1966, near Clendenin, West Virginia. 5 men were in a cemetery preparing a grave for burial when they all saw something they just couldn't explain. Lifting off from the nearby trees was a huge brown winged creature with glowing red eyes. The men held to the fact that whatever lifted off beyond those trees was no mere bird, it was humanoid.
Do you think that they just built a catapult to launch corpses into the air?
It's possible. I won't eliminate it. Things got even spookier a few days later, and this is kind of the big story of the Mothman. On November 15th, 1966, 2 young couples were joyriding around in a black 57 Chevy to a remote hangout spot north of Point Pleasant known as the TNT area. One of the couples was Linda Scarberry and Roger Scarberry. The other was Steve Millette and Mary Millette. Now, when they arrived next to the abandoned North Power Plant, they suddenly saw 2 large red eyes which reflected the light from the car's headlights. Steve noticed it first and pointed it out to the group. That's when they are said to have noticed that the glowing red eyes belonged to a strange creature. Weird. They claim to have seen a gray man-like figure with huge wings go around the corner of the old power plant, stating that the creature didn't run but wobbled like it couldn't keep its balance.
Check out my bicycle, it flies.
Oh, God. Linda described the creature as having a circular, fiery red eyes and a body like a man, but with wings. They said that the creature was about 6 or 7 feet tall with wings folded against its back, half man, half monster. She said you could see the muscles in its legs.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get to that later. That's important because, one of the skeptics was a scientist who thought it was a herring and a large crane, but you don't see muscles in crane legs.
I don't know if that guy goes to CrossFit.
We'll get that later.
Yeah, if he doesn't skip leg day.
Yeah.
Right. The couples couldn't believe what they saw. They quickly drove onto Route 62. Linda yelled for Roger to hurry. The couples then saw the creature on a hill by a large billboard as they went around a curve. It spread its wings and went straight up into the air. They were all terrified and kept yelling for the driver to go faster. The Mothman began gliding back and forth over the back end of their car. We didn't know what it was. I don't think we've ever been so scared, said Linda. As they went along a straight stretch of road, they noticed that the speedometer had gone past the 100 miles per hour mark, but somehow, some way, the creature was still able to keep up with them. They saw it in the back window and saw the shadow go across the car as it flew. They couldn't get away from it. They could also hear the wings hitting the top of the car as they drove,
that's
even
cool.
said to have left scratch marks on top of Roger's 57 Chevy. It squeaked like a big mouse, said Mary Millette. There we go. That's what I was waiting for. They were
cute on the inside.
Now, they were only able to get away from the Mothman when they reached the edge of Point Pleasant, when the creature disappeared, veering off into a field as they went into town. The couples continued into town and stopped at the local Dairyland as they tried to figure out what to do
Seems
next.
like a safe place to pull over.
Yeah.
Dairy Queen.
Sure, why not? Get a frozen yogurt there. And
I'll have a brown derby.
Linda suggested they go to the police, but Steve and Roger thought they'd laugh at them and wanted to go back to make sure whatever that thing was still there first before they went to the police. But once back in the car, the group ended up being too afraid to do that, so they turned around. As they were turning around, they saw a large dead dog laying on the road, which wasn't there before. According to the couples, the winged creature...
I tried petting him and his neck broke. I'm sorry.
I deal with this every story. According to the couples, the winged creature jumped out as they passed where the dead dog was, went over the top of their car, and went through the field on the other side. They drove back into town and parked at Tiny's Diner and decided to contact the police.
People are really hungry.
I know.
When they get scared, they get hungry.
They get hungry after this kind of stuff.
Hello, I need tacos.
Now the teens told their story to Deputy Millard Halstead. They told the police that what they saw was a large winged creature whose eyes glowed red when the car headlights picked it up. They described it as a flying man with 10-foot wings following their car. Halstead didn't believe him at first, but he knew they weren't troublemakers and saw that they were genuinely terrified. So Halstead actually went out to investigate their story. The couples drove back out to the TNT area with the deputy. Millard shined a spotlight around the area, including the tree lines. Now, Deputy Halstead is said to have heard strange static disturbances coming from his radio that he couldn't explain, but he found no clear sign of the creature itself. The witnesses were sitting in their car and said that they saw shadows circling nearby and a cloud of dust kick up from an adjacent coal yard. The Mallets were too scared to go back to their homes. They stayed at the Scarberry's trailer. Turned on all the lights.
7 pizzas.
And they ordered pie. And they stayed awake all night from fear. Now, the following day, Sheriff George Johnson held a press conference to discuss the sightings. The local press began printing the story and dubbed the creature Mothman, based on the comic book character Batman, who had just gotten a television series at the time. Steve Mallett told the local newspaper...
Just call me Batman, then?
Trademark reasons.
Exactly. Steve Mallett told the local newspaper, "We understand people are laughing at us, but we wouldn't make all this up to look like fools." Now, the harrowing experience of the two couples was not the only unusual occurrence that night in Point Pleasant. Around 10:30 p.m., contractor Newell Partridge was sitting at home in front of television. Suddenly, the picture on the screen disappeared. It was replaced by a herringbone pattern and a loud whining noise. He could now hear the familiar sounds of his dog Bandit howling on the porch. Bandit was a big, muscular German shepherd who was always on guard, alerting Partridge of any unusual happenings around the house. He was a country dog and used to defending himself and his family.
This is starting to sound like In Memoriam. Tell me the dog lives.
I don't think so. Partridge quickly made his way to the porch to see what his loyal Bandit was making such a fuss about. The dog was heading to the family's barn, located about 150 yards away. Partridge aimed his flashlight in the direction of the barn and was shocked to see 2 circle-like eyes glowing red through the night. Partridge's own words were, "I shined the flashlight in that direction and it picked up 2 red circles or eyes which looked like bicycle reflectors. I certainly know what animal eyes look like. These were much larger. It's a good length of a football field to that hay barn. Still, those eyes showed up huge for that distance." Something wasn't right, and Partridge ran inside to get his trusty gun, ready to defend himself from whatever or whoever was trespassing on his property. He spent the night with one eye open and the gun at his side. When morning broke, he went to find Bandit, worried that he was hurt or worse, dead. But there was no sign of Bandit. But Partridge did find a worrisome clue to his whereabouts. He found tracks in a circular pattern, telling him that Bandit had gone round and round, probably barking at something in the air. Bandit was never seen again.
Oh, jeez.
Now, about a year had gone by, during which time dozens of UFO sightings in Point Pleasant and the surrounding tri-state area were reported by residents, as well as cattle mutilations, crop circles, and strange men in black who threatened the lives of some of the 100 witnesses to see the creature.
Injured Cold. You talk about Injured Cold. Does he come into this?
Well, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do have him later, but that's a very fascinating aspect to this story. The sightings culminated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge across the Ohio River on December 15th, 1967, resulting in the deaths of 46 people, 2 of which were never found. Now, an interesting note, in interviewing witnesses of their accounts, John Keel discovered that a few of them had precognitive dreams about the collapse of the bridge, including Mary Heyer, a local reporter who had nightmares of Christmas presents floating in the river.
And people died. A bunch of people died in that bridge.
46.
46 people.
Yeah.
They were going to.
It was Christmas
I didn't hear
time.
the
It was
46.
right before
Yeah.
Christmas time. And
They were all
was,
going to Ohio to Christmas shop and coming home, and the bridge collapsed.
Yeah.
Are there better presents across state lines?
Yeah, I think
Right,
so.
right.
Better shopping. I mean, the Point Pleasant just had a old TNT factory.
That's right.
And
But-
a lot of places to eat.
It was after that he was kind of associated, the Mothman, with being some sort of harbinger of doom. Most people thinking that he was, there to prophesize some sort of event. Not so much as causing the event in and of itself, but certainly having something to do with those television sets going weird, the UFO lights, and then the strange precognitive dreams of all these residents, seeing
Did you guys
things.
just hear that? There was like a weird echoey thing in the system. Did you hear that?
I heard it.
No, I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear
You
it
guys
either.
didn't hear that just
It might
now?
just be a chair.
Was it just Riley's chair? I'm getting spooked.
Strange.
Well,
Sounded like
Mothman?
something, an echoey tunnel.
But anyway, that is the story of the legendary Mothman. Now, like I said, there are witnesses' accounts of him, and I read a few of them around, witnesses seeing around Fukushima plant the days before it exploded, 9/11,
Where
Chernobyl.
I knew about the Chernobyl thing,
Yeah.
but is it time? Are we still?
So I thought the Mothman had just kind of vanished out of history's existence. We often talk about how these things come in flaps, or they like this was happening for about a year and then just kind of got lost out of the collective conscious for a while,
Right,
and then show back up again. And most recently, there's been quite a few sightings in and around Chicago, including pictures and photographic evidence and the detailed accounts of what they describe as a large gray muscular man with 10-foot wingspan seen flying in and around the suburban area, which is very strange.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
been seen as far like near the Wisconsin border by that truck driver that we reported on a couple months ago.
Mhm.
I'm looking now to see if I can get any updates on the Chicago Mothman.
So maybe this Mothman is not a beastie, but it's more just a guy coming to warn everybody.
Well, that's what they.
If only they would listen to him.
Yeah, well, that's what they think. That's what some think.
Stop being
you know?
scared.
I'm trying not to kill these dogs. I just want to tell you about the bridge.
Hey, a Mothman's got to eat,
Yeah. Now what?
or does it?
Now what Michael was referring to is a
Indrid Cold.
is a guy named Indrid Cold. Now Indrid Cold was first reported by I forget the guy's name, but he was traveling down the highway when all of a sudden he sees a floating vehicle come up next to his,
Yep.
stop him on the highway and get out, and telepathically start questioning him about the town up ahead.
About Point Pleasant. He's
Oh.
this weird dude. He kind of looks like the Joker. He
He's
has
also
real
known
pale
as
skin.
the Grinning Man.
Yeah, the Grinning Man. It's so weird because like they base Mothman off Batman, right? The name.
Right.
And then this character that is kind of like the Joker shows up in town and he's sort of like a Men in Black.
Well, this is where from a lot of what I've read, this is where usually the first accounts of kind of like the Men in Black start taking place, especially like what this guy wore, the dark suit, the tie, the fedora hat.
and he was kind of
Very-
weird.
yeah.
He didn't know how to like really speak the
Oh,
lingo.
so the grinning man is a man in black.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
he comes after the whole thing and starts questioning people about
Almost
the
like a
Mothman.
nemesis to Mothman, or someone tracking down the witnesses who reported seeing the Mothman. So there's some sort of interplay happening there. But lives of the witnesses, and there were over 100 witnesses within that year.
Here's what people said he looked like.
Said that they went as so far as to threaten the lives of those witnesses about what they saw. There's a great couple minutes in the movie Mothman with Richard Gere where Richard Gere's holed up in his hotel, and he's getting spooked, and he answers the phone, and it's Indrid Cole in this almost electronic voice, and he just starts. He just knows everything he sees.
He's describing stuff in the hotel room, right?
Richard Gere shoves his shoe under he's like, where's my shoe? And he gets the answer, under the bed, and he's like now I gotta, okay. And he opens up a book and he's like, what am I reading? And he reads the sentence, and this is actually what happened to author John Keel. So much so as he would get all kinds of strange phone calls in the middle of the night, which is what this whole scene was based on, really culminating to the strangest of what he thought is when he got so spooked from his telephone that he pulled it out of the wall. Woodrow Derenberger is the name of the guy on the highway. And so to where John Keel pulled his phone out of the wall and it rang again. And that's where he answered it and started getting these, almost like he could communicate telepathically, but whatever Keel seemed to know.
When did Mothman first show up? What year?
66.
And November 2nd, 1966 is when Indrid Cole first arrived on the scene.
Yeah.
So that's like before the shit went down.
Yeah.
And the bridge, that's before the bridge
collapsed. And now
collapsed.
Mary Heyer, who was a local reporter who did exhaustive investigative reporting on all these witnesses in and around town. And she's kind of legendary in her own right, but she has her own eyewitness account on the Silver Bridge of like two men in black described, in their usual looking with the weird dress shoes climbing around the bridge, which is very strange in and of itself before it went down. So kind of like examining the bridge and looking for things before the bridge collapsed.
Okay, well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to ask our guest, Mark,
what the hell was that?
Kansas City. Food-wise, a city famous for its barbecue. But that's about to change. My name is W. Dave Keith, host of the podcast Taco the Town, and I believe that Kansas City is one of the most underrated, underappreciated, up-and-coming taco towns in the USA. On Taco the Town, we will shine a light on all the amazing tacos Kansas City has to offer. Kansas City is a great taco town filled with a variety of untapped taco stylings and flavors. And on the Taco the Town podcast, we won't stop until we've tasted every taco in the town. No taco table will go unturned. Each episode, we review a new taco joint with a special guest. We share taco memories, discuss taco topics, and put tacos to the test. We check the latest stories in taco news, and no taco is off the table on Taco the Town. If you love tacos, like I do, you're gonna love Taco the Town. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and Google Play. That's Taco the Town.
And we're back, Bigfoot Collectors Club, and it's time for our segment, What the Hell Was That? In which our guest tells us what the hell that thing was. That thing this week being Mothman.
Yeah, this is like me having to eat the 96-ounce steak.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
that's
you got one of the big ones.
That's
a lot.
It's a big one. It's a heavy hitter. This is like a very popular cryptid. He's really reached icon status. Like you see him on a lot.
Who's your Mount Rushmore?
Mount Rushmore would be Sasquatch.
Yep.
Patty, yeah.
Mothman, Gray Alien,
And Loch Ness.
and Loch Ness, probably the Loch Ness monster.
Oh wow, so
he's up there.
Big time.
He's up there.
It's tough. I feel like one factor to the story of the two couples that originally saw,
And they were joyriding, which means they were giving out lots of handies in that car.
which is a recipe for disaster in any sort of spooky, scary story.
Well, I mean, as you, a guy who talked about those spooky movies, they usually, couples went up to this TNT area to fool around, and so it kind of has that lore, which
necking.
lend itself to those types of movies.
But I think there is an element for me anyway with this stuff of, I know from myself when I have. If I'm feeling anxiety, paranoid, I'm going to get caught. My imagination heightens immensely.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying they made all of that up, but it does sort of, the scratching sounds. Just there's a lot of details in their account that make me say, well, that could have been anything. They could have just been maybe maybe there's a stick sticking out of the bottom of your car dragging on the road that was making sounds.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Robert L. Smith, who was an associate professor of wildlife
I bet you weren't
biology.
prepared to go up against the doctor, Mark.
No, I was not.
Well, I'm going to help him on the skeptical side. He was an associate of wildlife biology at West Virginia University, dismissed the notion that a flying monster was staking out the town, instead attributing the sightings
a very brave stance on the story.
to a sandhill crane, which stands almost as tall as the average adult man and bears reddish flesh around its eyes, But that doesn't describe, if you'll recall, Mary's accounts of those muscular legs.
Yeah, and also his eyes, even if he's got reddish skin around his eyes, it's not going to glow red like bicycle reflectors.
It's really the eyes that stand out in most of the witnesses' accounts, saying, I just remember being so terrified of these red eyes that almost seemed to peer through me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
it does make me think of when I was in Boy Scouts, and during camp we all had to go on a night hike, and this is an awful thing to do to children, but you were told the legend of Crazy Charlie.
Oh no!
A guy who was the cook at the Boy Scout camp.
Yeah,
Sure.
Always the
usually
cook.
a cook. Yeah,
And there was a cracked skillet in the mess hall, and they were like, "Yeah, that used to be Crazy Charlie's." Then when you hear the story, he lost his mind, and people decided to take the law into their own hands, and they burned his house down, and he came out swinging that frying pan, and that's how it broke.
Oh yeah,
and he died in that
then
fight,
they
and now he
put
lives
that,
in the woods.
They immediately hung that back in the camp kitchen.
Yeah,
after he murdered people
and,
with it.
and he
As you do.
and he lives in the old burned out remains of that cabin.
Oh yeah.
So just essentially, assholes built a scary story around an actual burned out structure in the woods.
Well,
and then at night, the red eyes come in. The senior members of the Boy Scout troop would go out beforehand and just be waiting at the site. And they had built, I remember the one kid showed me, he took an old milk carton and he put 2 flashlights through it, and then he put red fabric over it. And we saw red eyes.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing.
And so I'm not saying the Mothman is just some prankster who was like, I'll go prank these guys.
But I would say you have to remember this whole story started with a rowdy group of grave diggers. And if Charles Dickens has taught me one thing, you never trust a grave digger. So maybe those guys
researching this story, I forgot how many UFO sightings also took place in and around the same time.
Sure.
And stalled cars and people's electronics were going on the fritzes. And I remember when reading about Mary Hyer's precognitive dream of those Christmas presents floating in the river that just haunted her.
Do we know what caused the bridge collapse?
Yeah, it was something as simple as structural malfeasance. I mean, it's basically an architectural's go-to of this is why we take engineering so seriously, because
they cut corners.
They
or something
just
like
cut
that?
corners. Yeah, it wasn't any malice or anything like that.
And
It
just
was
over time.
Yeah, and there were too many cars on the bridge. However, I do recall, I think in Keel's book, he says for some reason at both ends of the bridge there were red lights seeming to allow cars to pile up on that bridge, or for some reason like that, which is. So there's a lot of interplay that's happening around
weird
these
too,
men in black hanging around the bridge.
And the red eyes are almost like stoplights, you know what I mean? So I don't know, there's this is a weird, I mean, obviously the Mothman is a really compelling one. It's a very weird one. It's very similar to the Van Meter visitor that we had, who was another flying winged creature in the late 1800s that kind of looked like a pterodactyl, but also shot a light out of its forehead. And also hung around that old mine in town, and that's kind of where the Mothman was hanging around, this old TNT factory. So there's just this weird.
It's also very similar to a story you did, the Flat Woods Monster out of West Virginia, which is just down the road and took place only a few years.
I mean, it's
earlier.
around, and actually the one we did last week with Andy Rosen was the Cisco Grove encounter, and that took place in '64. That was a couple of years. I don't know. This is a weird one because you obviously have the traumatic event, so everyone in town is going to. that impacts everybody in the community. That's a tragic event, and I wonder if resonating out of that the mythology around this creature sort of got more fleshed out.
Well, yeah, you want to explain away the things that are unexplainable. I mean, it's why we tell stories. It's why this story is somewhat compelling to everyone, I would say, because you want to explain that tragedy of the bridge.
And there's a resonance of obviously high strangeness occurring before and after that tragedy. So if I were to use my imagination and say, okay, there was this winged creature, there was this like weird man in black guy walking around named Injured Cold that seemed to know stuff about people that he couldn't otherwise. Maybe there was some sort of, if we're going to go for a high strangeness thing here, maybe there was some sort of like dimensional rift taking place at that time, some sort of dimensional eclipse where some other dark dimension was sort of bleeding over into ours, and maybe it was allowed to happen because of the trauma, because of the psychological event surrounding the trauma, that it sort of sent a shockwave throughout reality before and after, and maybe that it sort of weakened, in other words, our dimensional barrier and allowed something else to creep in around that time.
You'll like this, Mike, and this is
my sci-fi fantasy explanation, but we got to think about stuff like that. If we take the story at its word.
I want to piggyback off that. Interestingly enough, Keel initially...
Get on up here. I'll ride you around the block.
John Keel initially sought to explain UFOs as extraterrestrial visitations, but later abandoned this hypothesis and wrote a book titled UFOs Operation Trojan Horse, published in 1970, which linked UFOs to supernatural concepts such as monsters, ghosts, and demons. Keel used the term ultra-terrestrials, which we haven't heard before,
I think ultra-terrestrial came up in the Van Meter Visitor.
Okay, great.
We did bring that up.
To describe UFO occupants he believed to be non-human entities capable of taking on whatever form they wanted.
Well, the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, and I remember this is what freaked me out because I hadn't really thought about this before, but the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, really kind of leans, and maybe the book does as well, that that Point Pleasant was having interaction with entities from another dimension who were crossing over and affecting our reality, and that there are entities that are constantly just here. They're here just on the other side of a dimensional rift.
Across the veil.
Just across the veil on the other side, that can see us, but we can't see them. And that the Mothman was connected to those, to that intelligence.
Sounds to me that maybe the Mothman and the Grinning Man are sort of locked in some sort of battle.
Well, that's
maybe.
what I'm saying. It does sound like Batman and Joker.
Totally does. Like the Grinning Man, maybe he's he's this villain who causes certain circumstances to occur.
And look, let's say if human thought or human psychic, whatever, can affect reality. Let's say it can affect reality. Then if you create an entity that's like Batman, this popular figure on TV,
well, then you'll need its antithesis.
You need a Joker to go with it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just pointing out the parallels here and how strange that is.
It should also be noted that there are
but where'd Mark go? Mark's gone. I'm here. Mark, where are you? Come back, Mark.
This is what we talked about, but I wrote it down. It should also be noted that there are no surviving accounts of what many have dubbed the Mothman's nemesis, Indrid Cold, reported at the event. Indrid Cold, also known as the Grinning Man, was said to be the mysterious man who was seen in Point Pleasant asking questions about the creature and apparently hunting it.
Haunting or hunting?
H-U-N-T.
Yeah. But now on the Mothman's behalf, there are stories of him like out of Friedberg, Germany. A couple of miners saw the Mothman. He literally chased them out of a mining cave, and the cave just inexplicably blew up, saving those miners' lives. So had they not been chased out of by the Mothman, then they would have perished in that.
Ugly, but I'm
so he's like trying to undo the works of the Grinning Man, but the Grinning Man's constantly pursuing him as he tries to stop these circumstances from occurring.
I mean, who's to know? I mean, the Men in Black, the whole Men in Black thing is very strange because it rings true throughout these stories where In a lot of these UFO accounts, they'll be some of the witnesses will be followed up by these strange characters, usually arriving in a pair of 2 or 3 in dark cars that seem to. They don't seem emotionally interested in the case, but they're very interested in the details, and they want to take the witnesses and they want to go back to the place where they witnessed these things.
It's also weird too because Men in Black remind me of shadow men that people supposedly see haunting their houses, and sometimes they look like men wearing black fedoras. It's like shadow men. So I wonder if shadow men are Men in Black that haven't fully crossed over into our dimension. Maybe the Men in Black are from a shadow world.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm leaning. These Men in Black aren't government operatives, but they're part of the larger story of whatever's visiting these towns, and they're part of the paranormal history themselves.
Maybe Mothman's like a fallen shadow man who's now fighting for good.
I love your theories today, Riley.
I'm really team Mothman, I gotta say.
You're wearing the t-shirt.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Very on brand.
This gets a little, that gets a little far for me.
Sure.
And
Mark, shadow men being turned into moth creatures? What do you mean?
I guess in listening to that sort of
interpretation
and it makes me just go, there's might be a simpler explanation than that.
Oh God, you and Occam's razor again.
Yeah, there it is. But
I do want to just take you back to the hundreds of witnesses that officially reported seeing these things of this large gray-like man.
Gray-like man.
Yeah, a gray-colored man. With wings.
I just spent some time up in central coastal California, and there's a tremendous large forest that there could be lots of stuff out in it.
Oh man.
So is there a sort of cryptozoological explanation of this is just a creature we haven't ever found?
You know what?
Yeah, I've never liked that one.
Well, but there are other stories that support eyewitness accounts of creatures like this, as we just explained, and maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe there was some sort of weird bird man, and then maybe there's also, and it just happened to be around the time that the bridge collapsed. So
but as we're talking about that,
I know
it doesn't feel right.
But I'll jump on that, Mark. Point Pleasant is next to a wildlife reserve, and the TNT area was an old munitions site from World War II containing harmful chemicals and other munitions as well. So there is a theory of like mutagen, sort of evolved bird crane, something like that.
And
does that help? Does that help out in any way?
No, it doesn't. Just because of I don't have a great science background, but I did take one class in college about the evolution of the species and how mutation does take a lot longer. We love in mythology to say Spider-Man was a man
toxic soup
and he got bit by a spider and immediately has these powers, where if a mutation like that were to happen, it would probably be Peter Parker's great-great-grandson that would start to develop these powers if he survived.
Right.
Mutation would it generally takes longer than its ancestry. It isn't immediate.
Well, what if you found out that the Mothman used to scream "Cowabunga"? Then would that help the mutagen, the mutation? It's like
it's a turtle.
I know it's another, but that's another instance in comic books and in mythology of these turtles stepped in a puddle and now they can fight and they like pizza.
Well, speaking of stepping on something, one of the also more amazing accounts of Mothman was by an old lady, I forget her name, but carrying her daughter, and she literally stepped on the Mothman. And that
seems like a mistake.
It rose up from the ground. She actually
She
actually dropped her baby and then had to get down to the ground to cover it, whereas the Mothman got out from underneath her feet, stood up above her. She was completely terrified. She saw the same thing, glowing red eyes, the wings, very strange humanoid creature-like, she finally got the courage to run inside her house, where the being sort of and she used the word wobbled back over to the windows and started creeping in.
Man meter visitor wobbled too.
Yeah, very interesting. And her story was corroborated by witnesses across the street. So very like,
Who all happen to be grave diggers.
Maybe he's just like an avid hang glider, you know? Very secretive hang. That's why he wobbles.
With reflecting
it's
lights.
awkward to carry that thing around.
It is, though, as I said, with maybe there's a zoological, there's a plain species we haven't discovered before. In these accounts, whatever this beastie might be, it doesn't really act like an animal.
No.
Most animals, predatory or otherwise, want nothing to do with something that's their side. They're not right. Like they're probably going to be freaked out by a car and run away.
Yeah.
So you're going with hang glider theory then. That's your...
You got it.
All right.
Kite man. Well, all right. Another one for the books.
Yeah.
Another one for the history pages.
Yeah.
Maybe our radioactive great-great-grandchildren
But
will solve this one.
What makes this one, I think, very interesting for our listeners and for you, Mark, is today we live in an age where everybody has a camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
And there is more photographic evidence of the Mothman. They didn't have any pictures of him back then. They only used sketch drawings and eyewitness testimony. But today you can look on the internet and you can find multiple creepy pictures coming in and around Chicago of a giant dark winged creature flying in and around the buildings in populated
They've had
areas.
over 58 sightings in 2017, I think, alone.
Yeah.
Has there been
And
any
more.
reference to the Grinning Man character in Chicago recently?
I haven't looked that up, but
Gotta find out.
all you'd have to look up is like Men in Black recent reportings in Chicago.
Stay out of Chicago, it sounds like.
There's also a real creepy one, a picture of Mothman around the time of 9/11. All you'd have to do is Google 9/11 picture Mothman, and I think it's right at the time when the buildings had come down, and there in the picture, you'll see it is like this thing with wings. Now, most of the skeptics be like, "Nah, that's some sort of owl carrying a snake," or, but it's like you
lot of
look
those
at
in New
that
York.
thing, and you're just going, "What the fuck is that?"
Weird. I don't know about that. All right. Well, I want to thank our guest, Mark, for joining us today and subjecting himself to our idiocy.
Totally.
We love it. We're going to get to the bottom of this at some point.
We'll figure it out.
Mark, where can people find you?
I'm on all the
should wanna be
social media
found?
things at Mark McConville.
Cool. Awesome, man.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Even the ones we don't know about yet.
Yeah, like, do you guys know about Rex?
No. What's Rex?
It's like a recommendation.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
You're like, I saw this movie and I think you'd like it.
Oh,
Or,
really?
I ate at this restaurant.
Oh, right.
It's sort of what I want out of social media,
Oh my God.
All right.
but it's not going to last.
Oh, shoot.
It's like one of those.
Is it one of those where you like rate people? You're like,
No.
4 stars.
Okay. No, it's just like, oh man, have you been watching Atlanta?
It's a rec-
Oh,
Right.
I see. Okay, cool.
Which, by the way, is fucking amazing.
I
this
hear
new
it's
season.
I'm
great.
behind. I am behind.
I mean, it is out of this.
I'm
I
finally
feel like
could-
it's, you know how people were like, House of Cards has changed television. I feel like the new season of Atlanta is kind of like changed the
Dude,
way television can be done.
I've heard it's the best show on TV right now. And
it's
I don't
wild.
Know why.
It's out of control.
On the
There's so
subject
much
of
it-
Donald Glover, that new music
The new
video,
music
This Is
video.
America. Oh my
I
God.
saw a
Amazing.
glimpse of it yesterday. I
It's,
haven't watched that
it's
either.
incredible.
Yeah.
That song is incredible. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to him as Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think comes out the week that this drops.
Oh, is
By
that
the
right?
way, my wife goes like, I got to throw her under the bus, literally, because the sign was on a bus. And so she was like, she saw the Solo. I was like, saw the ad for Solo on the side of the bus, and she goes, "Wait, so Solo's black now?" And I went, "That's Lando Calrissian."
I thought you were going to say she saw the sign that said Solo and was like, why are there all those people? I thought he was by himself.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. Check us out, Bigfoot Collectors Club and all the shits. And please recommend us on iTunes and all that stuff. Riley, any Spindrift shows coming up?
Probably. Look at, check
Yeah.
the old internet. Check out my pictures of
Cool.
trash
All
at
right.
hashtag
Yeah. Oh.
hashtag trash bag.
All right, cool.
That's hard to
And
say.
Mr.
It
Bryce
is.
Johnson, Bryce O. Johnson.
Yes, if you are one of our listeners who download our frequent episodes, please do us a huge favor. Jump onto iTunes, give us a rating, and review us. It doesn't have to be long, but just tell us what you think of our show. We love reading those, and it surely helps out. And if you're even more interested in the show and you want to contribute in another way, please feel free to log on to our Patreon account at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.
We are putting up a lot of content.
We are doing a lot of interesting and cool, unique things.
We got like some cool stuff coming up too.
Yeah,
we've dropped a couple movie club episodes. We've got some short story stuff.
It's true. And for less than the cup of a coffee, you will be privy to all those special
lengthy
ingredients.
stoner conversations about the nature of reality, which everyone should listen to.
Yeah, really.
And we've got some special reports coming up this summer that should be really, really wild.
Yeah,
How
so check
special
those
are they?
out.
How special are they?
Pretty special. Woo! Bye, guys.
Bye. Later.
Bye-bye. Say bye, Mark.